There's a certain kind of quiet you long for. Not silence, but stillness. Not the absence of noise, but the presence of peace. In a world that never stops, notifications buzzing, news screaming, expectations piling, you feel like you're always on, always behind, always bracing for the next disruption. But what if peace wasn't something you had to find? What if it was something you could build from the inside out? This is where the forgotten wisdom of Stoicism begins. Not with rules, but with a choice. To step out of the noise and return to yourself. It starts the moment you wake up. Your phone lights up with missed calls, breaking news reminders, deadlines. Your mind races before your feet touch the floor. You're already responding to the world before you've had a moment to respond to yourself. You scroll, you sip coffee, you try to breathe, but the pressure keeps rising. Another email, another headline, another unexpected change in plans. It's exhausting. This isn't just modern life. This is modern overload. And the real damage, it doesn't show up in your calendar, it shows up in your nervous system. You carry it in clenched jaws, restless nights, and the feeling that you're never quite okay. You're not alone. We are living in a world that rewards speed but punishes stillness. A culture that glorifies control but leaves us anxious when things slip through our grasp. And the irony, most of what we suffer from mentally and emotionally isn't caused by the world itself. It's caused by how we react to it. This is where Stoicism enters, not as a philosophy of denial, but of distinction. It doesn't ask you to stop feeling. It asks you to stop fueling the wrong things. Because the Stoics knew something we forget every day, that true power lies not in what you control out there, but what you master in here. Your thoughts, your impulses, your reactions. Not suppression, but sovereignty. Not don't feel, but feel and choose with wisdom. Imagine this, you still get interrupted, you still get criticized, you still face failure. But instead of spiraling, you stay steady. Instead of reacting, you respond. That's not just peace, that's self-command. And it's a skill anyone can learn. The Stoics lived in a chaotic world too. Wars, plagues, betrayals, uncertainty. And yet they chose a life of inner strength over external chaos. They practiced presence before it was trendy. They wrote their thoughts, reviewed their actions, prepared for hardship, welcomed impermanence, not to escape suffering, but to become bigger than it. Because life will always be uncertain. People will always disappoint. Plans will always break. But your inner climate, that can be calm even when the outside isn't. And when you stop reacting to everything, you begin to feel something rare in today's world: space, clarity, freedom. But let's be honest, the cost of being reactive today is steep. A single tweet can ruin your day. A bad meeting can derail your confidence. An unmet expectation can leave you spiraling. We're not just overstimulated, we're overattached. To outcomes, to image, to validation. And that attachment is what turns life's natural turbulence into a storm we can't control. The Stoics called this confusion, mistaking what we can't control for what we must control. And in that confusion, we suffer. But when you learn to sort your worries, when you learn to say that's not mine to carry, everything shifts. You move from being a leaf in the wind to being the tree. You can feel it even now. That part of you that's tired of reacting. That part of you that craves stillness, not by fleeing the world, but by standing rooted in it. That's the voice Stoicism speaks to. Not the ego, not the anxiety, but the deeper part of you, the calm witness behind the noise. You've heard it whisper in the quiet moments. Now, maybe it's time to listen. Because the goal isn't to control the world. It's to master your place within it, to move through chaos with clarity, to feel deeply but act wisely. And to do that, we need to remember what the Stoics taught us. Not abstract theory, but practical guidance. Not escape, but resilience. So where do we begin in reclaiming our calm? Let's go back not just in time, but in perspective. To a painted porch in ancient Athens where a man named Zeno laid the foundation for a philosophy that still speaks quietly, powerfully today. Let's begin there. We begin in a place that no longer exists. A painted porch in the heart of ancient Athens. Stoa Poikilo, its columns tall, its shade cool, its walls decorated with scenes of battle and peace. This is where Zeno of Citium stood 2,000 years ago to teach not victory or conquest, but how to live well in a world that doesn't always make sense. He didn't shout, he didn't sell a cure, he simply asked questions. What is virtue? What can we really control, and how do we remain steady when everything around us shifts? This was the beginning of Stoicism, not born from comfort but from collapse. Zeno had suffered shipwreck, lost his fortune, and arrived in Athens with nothing. But he found something far greater than wealth. He found philosophy. And in that quiet search, a new path began to form. A path built not on external success, but internal stability. The people who followed Zeno were not mystics. They weren't removed from life. They were immersed in it. Seneca, an advisor to emperors, Epictetus, a slave-turned-teacher, Marcus Aurelius, the ruler of the Roman Empire itself. Their lives were filled with conflict, power, temptation, illness, exile. They knew pressure. They knew pain. And yet they kept returning to discipline, to perspective, to what we now call Stoicism. But don't picture them as ancient statues. Picture them as human. Marcus Aurelius sitting in his tent at night writing thoughts he never meant for the world to read. Not sermons, not lectures, but reminders, personal, raw, real. Don't let your imagination be crushed by life as a whole, he wrote. Take it one step at a time. This moment, this breath. He wasn't writing to impress anyone. He was writing to survive his own mind. Can you relate? That moment before a meeting, a performance, a conversation you're dreading when your thoughts spiral and your stomach knots. Marcus knew that feeling. So did every Stoic. That's why their wisdom feels so relevant, because they wrestled with the same chaos, just in different forms. And their solution, it always came back to one simple idea: control what you can, let go of what you can't. The Stoics called it the dichotomy of control. It sounds like common sense, but try living it for one day, and you'll see how radical it really is. You don't control other people. You don't control outcomes. You don't even control tomorrow. But you do control your attitude. You do control your effort. You do control the story you tell yourself in your own mind. That's where freedom lives. Not in the absence of difficulty, but in the presence of discipline. Let's pause here. Think about your own life. How much energy have you spent trying to manage things that were never yours? The way someone treated you, the job you didn't get, the plans that fell through, the opinions of people who don't even know you. We spend so much time fighting the ocean and so little time learning how to float. But the Stoics teach you can't control the waves. You can only control how you swim. And when you realize that something shifts, you stop wasting energy on noise. You stop flailing. You become deliberate, focused, still. This is what Zeno taught beneath those columns. This is what Epictetus reminded his students in a rented classroom. This is what Marcus Aurelius whispered to himself in his darkest hours. Not control the world, control yourself. Not avoid hardship, use it. Not suppress emotion, understand it, then rise above it. Stoicism isn't about turning away from life. It's about engaging with life more skillfully. It's not about being emotionless. It's about being emotionally intelligent. When Epictetus was beaten by his master and left with a permanent limp, he didn't become bitter. He said simply it was necessary. Not because he liked it, but because he understood something deeper, that suffering is a teacher, and every moment holds a choice. We don't choose everything that happens, but we always choose who we become because of it. Everyone feels anger. Everyone knows fear. Everyone's tasted the bitterness of envy, even if they won't admit it out loud. But have you ever paused to ask, where do these emotions come from? Why do we lash out? Why do we tighten up when something doesn't go our way? Why do we feel threatened by the success of others, even when we have enough? The Stoics believe that most of our destructive emotions come not from reality, but from our expectations about reality. We get angry not because something bad happened, but because we believed it shouldn't have happened. We feel fear not just from danger, but from trying to control the uncontrollable future. We feel envy not because others are better, but because we think their success somehow diminishes our own worth. At the heart of each emotion lies a belief, and if we don't examine that belief, it rules us. That's why Stoicism begins where most people never look inside. The Stoics didn't say never be angry. They asked, why are you angry? They didn't say don't be afraid. They asked, is this fear useful? This wasn't repression, it was recognition. They believed that before emotion turns into reaction, there's a brief space, a moment. And in that moment you have power. We call it emotional buffering today, a space between stimulus and response. The modern world calls it emotional regulation. CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, uses almost the exact same process. It helps people recognize distorted thinking, pause automatic reactions, and challenge unhelpful beliefs. The Stoics were practicing this centuries ago. Let's bring in a metaphor, one the Stoics would love. Picture a courtroom inside your mind. In the middle sits the judge reason. On one side, emotion storms in fiery, urgent, emotional. It pounds the table. You've been disrespected, you're going to fail, they don't deserve that success. But before a verdict is made, reason raises a hand. It asks, is that true? Is this useful? Is this within our control? And in that pause, the chaos quiets. That's emotional mastery. Not pretending you feel nothing, but not letting feelings make all your decisions. Most people don't live this way. Most people let emotion run the courtroom. They act on impulse, then justify it later. They react instantly, regret it slowly. The Stoics offered an alternative. Pause, observe, ask. Seneca once said, an angry man is again angry with himself when he returns to reason. And you've felt that, haven't you? The shame after the outburst, the regret after the impulsive decision. But if you catch it early before it erupts, you can choose differently. Mindfulness today teaches the same principle. Observe your emotion, don't become it. It's the difference between saying I am angry and saying I feel anger. One is identity, the other is experience. And when you practice this enough, you build distance, not detachment, just enough space to see clearly. You learn that your emotions aren't enemies. They're messengers, but they don't get to drive the car. They can ride in the back. You stay at the wheel. Think about a recent time you overreacted. Maybe someone said something small, but it hit a nerve. Maybe a delay or disappointment sent your mind spiraling. Did the situation cause the emotion, or did your belief about it ignite the fire? This is what Stoicism trains us to question. Let's take envy as an example. You see someone online living a life you wish you had. You feel jealousy, maybe even resentment. But pause. Is it really about them, or is it about your belief that you're behind, not enough, or unseen? The Stoics would remind you, another's fortune doesn't take from your own. And if you crave what they have, ask yourself, do I want the responsibility, sacrifice, and discipline it took to get there? Most of the time, the answer is no. We want the fruit, not the labor. And realizing that helps the envy fade. Fear works the same way. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of loss. But as Epictetus taught, it's not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them. When we strip those judgments away, fear becomes data, something to move through, not run from. Even anger, often a mask for hurt or insecurity, loses its power when we name what's underneath. Anger says, they disrespected me. Stoicism asks, why do I need their approval to feel at peace? And suddenly, when there's calm again. This is what internal distancing looks like. It's not passive, it's not cold. It's an active practice of choosing perspective over panic. The Stoics knew that if you can master your interpretation, you can master your experience. And that mastery isn't loud. It doesn't need applause. It just feels steady. Imagine living that way. Imagine not being yanked around by every emotion, every headline, every mood swing. Imagine a kind of silence in your soul, even when the world around you is in motion. That's Stoicism in action. Still, philosophy isn't complete without practice. It's one thing to understand calm, it's another to live it when life gets hard. So let's meet people who have lived it then and now. People who've turned this philosophy into real strength in the face of real storms. Philosophy means little until it's tested in fire. It's easy to sound wise when life is smooth. It's much harder to remain calm, focused, and principled when the world around you is falling apart. And yet that's exactly when Stoicism shines the brightest. Not in comfort, but in chaos. The true Stoic isn't the person who quotes Marcus Aurelius on a good day. It's the one who lives his teachings on the worst day. Let's meet a few of them. Some you've heard of, some you haven't. But all of them in their own way show us what inner mastery looks like under pressure. First, picture Rome, the 2nd century, the height of an empire, and the heart of a deadly plague. The Antonine Plague swept through the empire like wildfire. Some estimate it killed as many as 5 million people. Everywhere, fear, death, panic. And in the middle of it all, Marcus Aurelius. He wasn't just a philosopher. He was the emperor responsible for holding the empire together while sickness consumed it. And what did he do? He wrote. Not speeches, not proclamations, he wrote to himself. In a worn-out notebook between military campaigns and death tolls, he penned thoughts like, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." He wasn't detached from the crisis, he lived it. But instead of collapsing, he anchored himself in reason, virtue, and duty. Even while bearing friends and commanding armies, Marcus didn't run from fear, he examined it. He didn't cling to hope, he chose presence. This was Stoicism under pressure, and he lived it until his final breath. Now go back even further to a man who had nothing. No army, no power, not even freedom. Epictetus. Born a slave, crippled by beatings, he walked with a limp the rest of his life. But despite his body being broken, his mind was razor sharp. He believed that while others may control your circumstances, they could never touch your will. His famous teaching, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." He didn't just preach it, he lived it. He endured abuse, poverty, exile, but he never allowed those things to corrupt his core. Instead, he taught, quietly, patiently, powerfully. Imagine the contrast, a man who owned nothing, teaching people how to live with freedom. His classroom wasn't polished, but his philosophy iron. He trained others not to chase safety, but to become unshakable. He proved that dignity isn't a product of status. It's a product of discipline. Fast forward almost 2,000 years, Vietnam, 1965. James Stockdale, an American fighter pilot, is shot down. He parachutes into enemy territories captured and spends the next 7.5 years as a prisoner of war. Tortured, beaten, starved, kept in isolation, used for propaganda. Most would lose hope. Stockdale didn't. Because before the war he had read the works of Epictetus, he had internalized them, and now in the worst conditions imaginable, he relied on them. He refused to let the enemy define him. He resisted subtly and strategically. He created secret systems to communicate with other prisoners. He accepted what was out of his hands but fiercely controlled what was in his power, his attitude, his focus, his values. He later said, "I never lost faith in the end of the story." That's not blind optimism. That's stoicism, facing the brutal facts while holding on to your internal compass. He called it the Stockdale paradox: confront reality. Don't sugarcoat it, but never lose the will to persevere. His body was broken, but his mind untouched. That's the Stoic way. And now come to today. No thrones, no prison camps. Just a young man in his 30s working in tech. He makes good money, has a smart home smartphone, smart everything. But his mind is a mess. He's burned out, overstimulated, anxious. He checks Slack at 2 a.m. His mind buzzes constantly. His body's always tight. He starts having panic attacks, small ones at first, but they grow. He tries meditation, it helps, but something is missing. Then by accident, he finds a quote online: "You suffer more in imagination than in reality." Seneca. That sentence breaks something open in him. He starts reading more. He finds the Daily Stoic, listens to podcasts, discovers Marcus and Epictetus, and for the first time in years, he starts letting go. He wakes up 30 minutes earlier to journal. He asks himself, what am I expecting from today? He deletes a few apps. He practices silence. He starts asking, is this within my control? And if not, he releases it. In time, the panic fades. Not because his life gets easier, but because he gets clearer. He no longer clings to what others think. He reclaims his breath, his choices, his calm. He isn't a master yet, but he's practicing. And in that practice, he's changing. So what do all these stories have in common? A plague, a prison, a broken body, a broken mind. And yet every person found strength not by resisting life, but by reframing it. They didn't escape hardship. They transformed it. They made pain a teacher. They made fear a signal. They made discomfort a forge. This is stoicism in action. And it doesn't require a crisis, it requires a choice. To show up every day not as a victim of the world, but as a craftsman of your inner life. To say, I will not be ruled by what I can't control. I will respond with reason. I will stand in storms and I will not shake. So how do we become more stoic, not just admire it? Let's examine the practices. Let's learn how to build that kind of strength from the inside out. Let's step into the daily disciplines that make stoicism a way of life. The Stoics believed that wisdom wasn't something you stumbled into. It was something you practiced over and over. They weren't content to talk about philosophy. They lived it, quietly, deliberately, every single day. And they left us tools, not grand rituals or secret doctrines, but small, powerful habits that sharpen the soul. Today we call it mindset. They called it the art of living. Let's step into their daily practice. 1. Journaling, the mirror of the mind. Marcus Aurelius didn't plan to write a bestseller. He was writing to himself to steady his mind, to remind himself what mattered. His meditations are filled with simple reflections. What is in my control today? Where did I overreact yesterday? What virtue do I need most right now? You can do the same. Your journal doesn't need to be poetic, it needs to be honest. You can start your morning with a single prompt. What kind of person do I want to be today? And close your day with a question. What emotion ruled me today and did it serve me? This is your chance to meet your mind without judgment. 2. Morning intentions, evening reviews. The Stoics anchored their days in awareness. In the morning, they prepared for difficulty. In the evening, they examined their actions. Morning. You visualize the potential friction. Someone might insult you. Your plan might break. You remind yourself none of this is mine to control. But my response is evening. You look back not to shame yourself, but to learn. Where did you cling? Where did you pause and breathe? You begin to track your patterns. And slowly those patterns begin to shift. This isn't about perfection, it's about presence. 3. Negative visualization, premeditatio malorum. One of the most radical Stoic techniques is imagining what could go wrong. Not to scare yourself, but to make peace with the truth that life is uncertain. You picture loss, delay, discomfort. You walk through the scenario in your mind, and instead of fear, you feel prepared. You've softened the shock before it hits. Seneca once said, "He who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than necessary." So the Stoics chose to suffer voluntarily in their thoughts so they could suffer less in life. Next time you're stressed about something uncertain, try this. Visualize it happening. Then imagine how a wise, calm version of you would respond. It's not fear, it's training. 4. Voluntary discomfort, building the mind through the body. We live in a world that worships comfort, but the Stoics pursued discomfort on purpose. Seneca would fast. Epictetus would walk in the cold. They wore simple clothes, avoided excess, and welcomed friction. Why? Because when you can be calm while uncomfortable, you become unstoppable. Today, that might mean skipping a meal, taking a cold shower, leaving your phone behind for a walk, sleeping on the floor once a week. These aren't punishments. They're reminders you are tougher than you think. Comfort is optional. Every small discomfort embraced with calm builds resilience. 5. The discipline of desire. This is perhaps the most misunderstood Stoic teaching. It's not about suppressing desire, it's about disciplining it. The Stoics didn't say don't want anything. They said want wisely. Want virtue over vanity, want growth over gratification, want clarity over chaos. When your desire is tied to things outside your control status, praise, possessions, you become a slave to circumstance. But when your desire is tied to excellence of character, you're free. Each time you choose to want less, you gain more inner freedom. Ask yourself, what do I really want? And is that leading me toward peace or away from it? Seis amor, fati, loving what happens. Acceptance is powerful. But the Stoics went further. Amor fati, love of fate, means embracing everything as necessary. Not just tolerating it, but saying yes. Even this. That job loss, that failed relationship, that flat tire, that awkward silence. It's not a glitch, it's the material for your growth. You stop asking, why me? You start saying, let's see what this teaches me. You don't force positivity, you choose alignment. The Stoic sees every event as raw material for virtue. Every inconvenience becomes an opportunity to practice patience. Every failure becomes a lesson in humility. This isn't blind optimism, it's deep alignment with the rhythm of life. 7. Modern tools, ancient roots. Stoicism isn't stuck in the past. Today we have meditation apps, habit trackers, and digital journals. They're all echoes of ancient practices. A mood tracker, that's your emotional review. A guided meditation, that's your moment of mindful Stoic reflection. A fasting app, that's voluntary discomfort with a modern UI. A gratitude list, that's your morning Stoic calibration. You're already halfway there. The only difference is intention. Stoicism doesn't ask you to delete your apps. It asks you to use them with wisdom. Let technology support your practice, not distract from it. 8. Try just one. This is where many people stop. They try to do it all, they fail, they quit. Don't. Just start with one. 5 minutes of journaling, one cold shower, one moment of am I in control of this? That's enough. The goal isn't to be perfect, it's to return again and again. You fall, you get reactive, you lose your center. But then you come back, you remember there's a better way, and you return to the path. This is practice, this is philosophy alive. Even the simplest practice can reshape how we move through life. But where does all this lead? What is the deeper transformation waiting on the other side? Let's explore what real inner revolution looks like. Let's look at a Stoic life fully lived. All along, this journey hasn't been about controlling your life. It's been about changing your relationship to it. This is the quiet revolution of Stoicism. Not in changing others, not in perfecting the outside, but in mastering yourself one breath, one choice at a time. Because the truth is, most of what you experience in life doesn't come from the world. It comes from how you relate to the world. The storm outside matters far less than the weather inside. When you truly practice Stoicism, something subtle but powerful happens. You feel a new kind of calm, not the kind you get from silence or a spa day, but the kind that stays with you through the meeting, the traffic, the grief, the noise. A calm that says, this moment cannot steal my center because I am no longer giving it away. You start responding instead of reacting. You begin to notice the pause between stimulus and choice, and in that pause is your power. That's the first sign of transformation, not grand gestures, but quiet sovereignty. Then comes resilience. Life keeps throwing what it throws, but you bend less. You're not hardened, but you're held. Your disappointments still hurt, but they don't define you. Your plans still change, but they don't ruin you. You've stopped clinging to outcomes. You've started anchoring in values. The question shifts from how can I get what I want to, how can I remain who I am no matter what happens? And that shift, it makes you dangerous to fear and useful to everyone around you. Because people around you feel it. They trust your steadiness. They notice your clarity. You become the calm in the room, and often that's enough. You also gain courage, not the loud kind, the quiet kind. The courage to tell the truth, to let go of what you can't control, to walk away when something violates your integrity, to stand still when your old self would have run. This isn't about becoming fearless. It's about walking with fear, but not giving it the wheel. It's about choosing your action not based on emotion, but on principle. The Stoic doesn't need applause. They need alignment. And that's what courage is, loyalty to your values, even when it costs you. But make no mistake, Stoicism isn't cold. It's not the absence of feeling. It's the presence of love without neediness. It's care without control. It's involvement without attachment. When someone hurts, the Stoic shows up, but they don't drown in it. They hold space, they act, but they don't absorb. This is loving awareness, not detachment. You love deeply, you care fiercely, but you know their choices aren't yours. Their chaos isn't yours. Their praise or blame, not your job. You don't stop loving, you just stop clinging. And that's a different kind of freedom. Over time, you begin to sense a shift. You no longer react to every comment. You no longer spiral every time plans change. You start to hear your own voice beneath the noise of the world. And you realize, I don't need to prove anything. I don't need to fix everything. I just need to show up, clear, calm, and true. That's the revolution, not in becoming someone else, but in becoming more fully yourself. Less armor, more awareness. Less control, more compassion. There's a line from Epictetus, simple, powerful, timeless. You may not control all the events that happen to you, but you can decide not to be reduced by them. Read that again. Not reduced. Because life will shake you, that's guaranteed. But will it shrink you? Will it make you smaller, harder, meaner? Or will you stay open, strong, and soft? That's the Stoic decision, not just a mindset, a movement inside you. So what now? You don't need to remember every quote. You don't need to live this perfectly. You just need to ask yourself right now, in this moment, what is one thing I can let go of? One expectation, one resentment, one illusion of control. Start there. Because when you drop even one unnecessary burden, your soul breathes. And when your soul breathes, you return to yourself. And that ultimately is what Stoicism is, a return. To peace, to presence, to power. Not the power to control everything, but the power to remain centered in anything. And that is enough. A moment to breathe, to reflect, to choose your next step with intention. Because the calm you're seeking isn't out there, it's already here, waiting for you to claim it. This is the quiet revolution. This is the Stoic path. Not the loudest way, but the truest one. Thank you for walking it one breath at a time. If this journey resonated with you, breathe with it a little longer. You can support the channel by subscribing, but more than that, support yourself by returning to this path whenever the world feels too loud. Leave a comment. What's one thing you're choosing to let go of today? Let's walk this quiet revolution together.